I'm Brianna, 23 years old. For all 23 years, I existed as a servant inside my own home. Each day, I rose at 5 a.m. to scour floors, prepare meals, and launder clothes, while my brother Brandon slumbered until noon in his sprawling king-sized bed. My parents imparted a belief I accepted without doubt for more than 2 decades. Some children are born to be waited upon, others are born to wait upon. You belong to the latter. I never challenged it. Not until the bride's father, a stranger I'd never encountered, gazed at my face during the family photograph and began to shake. He drew me aside and posed a single question that demolished everything I thought I understood. Do you know who your real mother is? Before I go further, if this story speaks to you, please pause to like and subscribe, but only if you truly wish to discover what followed. And if you're viewing this, leave a comment sharing where you're from and what time it is there right now. Now, allow me to return to the morning of Brandon's wedding, the day I believed would mark the lowest point of my existence. We resided in a handsome two-story colonial in Fairfield County, Connecticut, in a neighborhood where every lawn gleamed with precision and every driveway held a European luxury sedan. Our neighbors included surgeons, lawyers, and hedge fund partners. To the outside world, the Patterson home embodied the classic American dream. Inside, it was my private hell. My so-called bedroom was no bedroom at all. It was the basement. Bare concrete floor, no windows, a thin mattress reeking of mildew. The furnace droned just 3 feet from my head. In winter, it offered my only heat. In summer, it turned the space unbearable. Every morning at 5, my alarm sounded. By 5:15, I was upstairs in the kitchen, polishing the granite countertops, firing up the Viking range, retrieving eggs and bacon from the Sub-Zero refrigerator. The kitchen island gleamed with Italian Calacatta marble. Donna once boasted about it to her book club. I knew every subtle vein in that stone because I buffed it daily. Gerald descended around 7, Wall Street Journal folded under his arm, Tag Heuer watch catching the light on his wrist. He eased into his leather armchair in the breakfast nook, never once meeting my eyes. "Is it ready?" he would ask, gaze fixed on the headlines. "Yes, Mr. Patterson." "The coffee's weak today. Strengthen it tomorrow." That summed up our exchanges. 23 years of clipped commands and single words. I placed his plate on the table, the fine Wedgwood china edged in silver, then withdrew to the kitchen. My place was never at that table. My place remained beside the sink, consuming whatever scraps remained once the family had eaten. Yet the deepest wound came not from the frigid basement or the relentless tasks. It stemmed from how they spoke of me. Brandon's room occupied the second floor, a corner suite with bay windows framing the garden. He enjoyed a 65-inch Samsung television on the wall, a PlayStation 5, and a walk-in closet larger than my entire sleeping quarters. He attended St. Thomas Academy, $45,000 annually, played lacrosse, followed the college prep track. I remained at home, homeschooled, Gerald explained to inquiring neighbors. The reality was far simpler. No one educated me. I taught myself to read from discarded magazines Donna tossed aside. I grasped mathematics by tallying grocery change. When Brandon reached 18, Gerald presented him the keys to a pristine white BMW 3 Series. I possessed no driver's license. I held no form of identification whatsoever. "Your papers were destroyed in a fire," Donna once explained when I was 12, and inquired why I couldn't attend the local middle school. "Replacing them is far too complicated. You're safer staying here with us." I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? She was my mother. Brandon carried an Amex Express Platinum card tied to Gerald's account. No spending cap. He purchased sneakers costing more than I had ever handled in cash my whole life. I owned exactly 3 dresses, all hand-me-downs from Donna, altered to suit my slighter build. At dinner, the family gathered around the table. Brandon recounted his classes, his friends, his weekend adventures. Gerald nodded with approval. Donna smiled warmly and replenished his glass. I lingered in the kitchen doorway, poised to collect the dishes. Once, at 14, I asked Donna why I couldn't join them at the table. She laughed as though I'd shared a clever quip. "Brianna, darling, the table only seats 3. It sat 6. I had counted. That evening, I faced the truth I'd long avoided admitting. I was not part of this family. I never had been. Gerald termed them the family rules. He'd inscribed them on an index card when I was 5 and affixed it inside my basement door, the only permitted decoration. Rule 1. You do not sit at the family table. Rule 2. You do not call us Mom or Dad. You will address us as Mr. Patterson and Mrs. Patterson. Rule 3. You do not leave the house without permission. Rule 4. You do not speak to strangers. The penalty for violations waited in the kitchen pantry, a slender rattan chain, the type used for caning furniture, concealed behind the cereal boxes. Gerald needed to wield it only twice for the lesson to take hold. The first time, I was 7. I had called Donna Mommy in front of her sister. The welts across my palms lingered for 2 weeks. The second time, I was 16. I had hoarded grocery change for months, $17.32, and walked the 3 miles to the bus station. I intended to escape. I intended to find help. Police returned me within 2 hours. She has no ID, no identification at all. Is she yours? Gerald offered his warm, paternal smile. She's our daughter, a troubled girl, mental health struggles. Thank you sincerely for bringing her home, officers. They departed. Gerald bolted the door. I endured 3 days in the basement without food. When he finally released me, he leaned in close and murmured, "Without papers, you don't exist. And if you don't exist, no one will ever believe you. No one will ever come to your aid. Do you understand?" I understood perfectly. For 7 more years, I never attempted to leave again. Brandon wasn't cruel in the manner Gerald was. He never struck. He didn't lock me in the basement or starve me for days. He simply didn't see me. To Brandon, I was furniture, functional, forgettable, present only when required. "Brianna, coffee." "Brianna, my room's a mess." "Brianna, the car needs washing before my date." When his friends visited, he'd introduce me with a casual flick of his hand. "That's our housekeeper." Not sister, not family, housekeeper. No one ever questioned it. I looked nothing like the Pattersons. They all shared brown eyes and sandy hair. My eyes were green, emerald in certain lights, and my hair a deep chestnut. I'd asked about it once, years earlier. Donna slapped me and ordered me to stop asking stupid questions. At 26, Brandon was handsome, self-assured, and employed at one of Connecticut's largest real estate firms. He hadn't earned the position. Victoria's father had arranged it. Victoria Whitmore, blonde, poised, daughter of Richard Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Properties, net worth $47 million. Brandon had proposed 3 months earlier at Per Se in Manhattan, with a 2-carat diamond ring charged to Gerald's card. The Pattersons were overjoyed. This marriage wasn't merely love, it was a scent. I overheard Gerald speaking to Donna the night of the engagement. "This is it. This is how we entered their circle. Richard Whitmore could change everything for us." They had no idea Richard Whitmore would change everything, just not in the way they anticipated. The woman Brandon was marrying would unwittingly help dismantle the life the Pattersons had constructed, not through any fault of her own, but because of her father. I was 15 when I finally voiced the question I'd buried for years. Donna sat in the living room, flipping through a Pottery Barn catalog, marking pages with Post-its. I had just finished mopping the floors. My hands were raw from bleach. "Mrs. Patterson." She didn't look up. "What?" Why am I different from Brandon? The catalog lowered. Her eyes, cold, flat, the color of dishwater, met mine. Different how? Why does he attend school? Why does he sit at the table? Why do I have to— She cut me off, voice sharp as shattered glass. "Some children are born to be loved. Some are born to help others be loved. You're the second kind, Brianna. That's your purpose. That's your fate." She returned to her catalog. The discussion was finished. That night, I descended to the basement and stared at my reflection in the small, cracked mirror above the utility sink, the only mirror permitted. My eyes bore no resemblance to theirs. My face bore no resemblance to theirs. But I no longer questioned it. Donna was right, I told myself. Some people are born to serve. I was one of them. Resisting would only invite more pain. For 8 more years, I believed it. I rose at 5, I scrubbed, cooked, cleaned, and repeated to myself that this was my life. This was what I deserved. Then came Brandon's wedding, and the man who looked at my face and saw someone entirely different. I didn't realize it yet, but within 24 hours, every lie I'd been fed would begin to come undone. The announcement arrived 6 months before the ceremony. Brandon and Victoria would marry at the Ritz-Carlton in White Plains, 200 guests, live orchestra, 5-tier cake from a Manhattan bakery. Total cost, $200,000, generously covered by Richard Whitmore. Gerald practically levitated around the house for weeks. "This is the biggest day of our lives," he repeated. "The Whitmores are old money, Connecticut aristocracy. We must make an impression." Donna immersed herself in preparations. She coordinated with Victoria's mother on flowers, catering, the rehearsal dinner. She purchased a new Oscar de la Renta gown, champagne-colored, $4,000. I assumed I would be a bridesmaid. For 6 months I had helped, addressing invitations, managing RSVPs, collecting dry cleaning. I had even practiced walking in heels, picturing myself in a lavender gown beside the altar. Then, 3 weeks before the wedding, Donna sat me down in the kitchen. "We need to discuss your role." My heart rose. "Am I walking with the bridesmaids?" She laughed, not kindly. "No, Brianna, you'll assist with service, passing champagne, ensuring guests have what they need." The words struck like cold water. "You want me to work the wedding?" "It's not working, it's helping." Her smile was thin, rehearsed. "You know how you are, sweetheart. Clumsy, awkward. If you stood up there in front of the Whitmores, they'd wonder what's wrong with you. Do you want to embarrass Brandon on his special day?" I shook my head slowly, the familiar numbness returning. Later that night, the invitations arrived from the printer, embossed gold lettering on 600-gram cotton paper. I searched every card. My name appeared nowhere on the family list. It appeared nowhere at all. The rehearsal dinner took place at Greenwich Country Club. White tablecloths, crystal stemware, champagne bottles costing more than I'd seen in a year. The Whitmores had reserved the entire terrace overlooking the golf course. I wore a simple black dress with a white apron, chosen by Donna herself. "You look professional," she said, straightening my collar. "Remember, smile, speak only when spoken to, and remain invisible." I carried a silver tray of champagne flutes through the crowd, Whitmore cousins, business associates, old money families whose names I recognized from the society pages Donna left scattered. No one noticed me. I was part of the backdrop. Until Victoria noticed. She approached near the bar, blonde hair in an elegant updo, engagement ring catching the sunset. "You're Brandon's sister, right, Brianna?" I nearly dropped the tray. "Yes, ma'am. Why aren't you sitting with the family?" Before I could respond, Donna appeared at my side, laugh high and bright. "Brianna prefers to help out. She's shy, always has been." He wasn't glancing. He was watching. His face had drained of color, jaw clenched tight. He approached slowly. "Excuse me, what's your name?" "Brianna, sir." "Brianna?" He repeated it as though tasting the word. Do you happen to know who your birth mother is?" The question made no sense. "I'm sorry?" He held my gaze for a long, searching moment, then excused himself abruptly and strolled toward the parking lot, phone already to his ear. Donna watched him leave, her smile fixed in place, knuckles white around her champagne flute. The night before the wedding, I sat alone in my basement. Upstairs, laughter rang out. Donna toasting with her sisters, Brandon's college friends clicking bottles in the living room, the house pulsing with celebration. Down here, only the furnace hummed and a leaky pipe dripped steadily. I held the black uniform I would wear tomorrow, smoothing wrinkles with my palms since I wasn't permitted to use the iron after 9 p.m. Beside me rested the starched white apron, spotless. On my lap lay the only photograph I possessed of myself with the family. I was 5, standing at the frame's far edge, while Gerald, Donna, and toddler Brandon posed together by the Christmas tree. They touched one another. I stood apart. In 23 years under this roof, I had not a single picture where I stood beside my parents, not one. Why? The question had whispered through my life, but I'd always forced it down. Asking brought pain. Curiosity invited punishment. Yet tonight, in the darkness, it refused to stay buried. Why didn't I resemble them? Why did they treat me like a stranger? Why had they kept me concealed for so long? I thought of Richard Whitmore's expression at the rehearsal dinner, the sudden pallor, the tremor in his voice when he asked about my mother. He had looked at me as though he recognized me, as though he had been searching for me. But that was absurd. No one had ever searched for me. No one had ever wanted me. Tomorrow, I would serve champagne at my brother's wedding while my family pretended I didn't exist. Then life would continue exactly as before. At least, that's what I believed. I had no inkling of what was approaching. I woke at 4 a.m. on the morning of Brandon's wedding. The house lay silent. I crept upstairs and began breakfast. Eggs Benedict, freshly squeezed orange juice. The spread Gerald demanded before any significant occasion. By 6, the dining room gleamed with the good china. Then I moved to the guest room where Victoria's wedding dress hung in its garment rack. Vera weighing $12,000, hands-beaded bodice and cathedral train. Donna had insisted on keeping it here, claiming our closets offered superior humidity control compared to the Whitmore estate. The true reason, I suspected, was so she could display it to her friends. I steamed the fabric with utmost care, terrified of leaving a single crease. My hands shook. If I damaged this dress, I didn't want to imagine Gerald's reaction. Footsteps behind me. Donna appeared in the doorway, wrapped in lavender silk robe, hair in rollers. Don't touch the beading. That's imported crystal worth more than you. Yes, Mrs. Patterson. She watched me work, arms folded. When we arrive at the hotel, enter through the service entrance. Don't let anyone see you going in. Yes, Mrs. Patterson. And don't embarrass us. Her voice dropped, sharp and frigid. This is the most important day of Brandon's life. If you do anything to ruin it, I will make you regret it. Gerald's voice thundered from downstairs. Brianna, where's my coffee? Donna smirked and departed. I stood there, clutching the steamer, staring at the wedding dress I wasn't permitted to touch and the life I wasn't permitted to live. Something shifted inside me, small but irreversible. This would be the last time. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I was finished. Enough. The Ritz-Carlton Grand Ballroom resembled a scene from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cascaded from 30-foot ceilings. White roses spilled across every surface. The altar, centerpieces, sweeping archways. 200 gilded chairs faced the platform where Brandon would soon stand and pledge forever to a woman whose family fortune could purchase our entire neighborhood. I entered through the loading dock. The catering manager handed me a silver tray and directed me toward the ballroom. Champagne service. Keep moving, keep smiling. Don't engage in conversation. I nodded and took my place. Guests arrived in waves. Women in designer gowns, men in bespoke suits, diamonds sparkling beneath the chandeliers. I wove among them, offering flutes of Veuve Clicquot, eyes fixed on the floor. A woman in Chanel stopped me. Excuse me, are you at the hotel? Yes, ma'am. The lie slipped out effortlessly. Gerald passed without a glance. Donna paused long enough to murmur, Your posture is terrible. Stand up straight. Then Brandon appeared with his groomsmen, laughing, adjusting his Tom Ford cufflinks. He spotted me and beckoned. Brianna, hey, make sure there's extra shrimp at my table. You know how Dad gets. Of course. He turned back to his friends. One of them, a former lacrosse teammate, squinted. Who's that? Housekeeper, Brandon replied. She's worked for us forever. The words cut deep. Housekeeper, not sister, not family. But I showed nothing. I'd learned long ago that reactions invited punishment. I resumed circulating, offering champagne to people who looked straight through me. Then I felt it, eyes on me. I glanced across the ballroom. Richard Whitmore stood alone, his untouched flute in his hand, gaze locked on my face. This time he wasn't merely watching, he was studying me. The ceremony began at 4 p.m. A string quartet played Pachelbel's canon as Victoria glided down the aisle in her Vera Wang gown, the train trailing 15 feet behind. Brandon waited at the altar, beaming, hands clasped before him. Gerald and Donna sat front row, dabbing their eyes with monogrammed handkerchiefs. I stood at the back of the ballroom, tray in hand, watching my family from 50 feet away. The officiant spoke of love, commitment, the sacred bond of marriage. Brandon's voice cracked on his vows. Victoria's eyes shimmered as she slid the Tiffany band onto his finger. They kissed. The room burst into applause, and I stood there, invisible, clutching champagne I wasn't permitted to taste. For a fleeting moment, I allowed myself to picture another life, one where I sat in the front row beside Donna, one where I wore a lavender dress and clutched a bouquet of roses, one where Brandon introduced me to his bride as my sister Brianna instead of our housekeeper. But that life didn't exist. Perhaps it never had. The crowd rose for the recessional. Brandon and Victoria glided down the aisle arm in arm, showered in rose petals. As they passed, Donna caught my eye. Her look held no warmth, no pride, only a clear warning. Don't forget your place. I dropped my gaze. Somewhere in the crowd, that watchful presence returned. Richard Whitmore, positioned near the back, hadn't clapped once. His eyes had never left me throughout the entire ceremony. I didn't understand why, but an unfamiliar sensation stirred in my chest, something dormant for years. Hope, and I had no idea what to do with it. If you've stayed with me this far, I believe you understand why I'm sharing this story. You may know the ache of standing inside your own family, yet being treated like an outsider, of serving people who refuse to admit you exist. Let me ask you, have you ever had to serve someone who wouldn't even acknowledge you as part of their family? If you have, please tell me in the comments. Let me know I'm not alone. And if this story is striking close to home, like and subscribe, because what happened next shattered everything I thought I knew about myself. I'll be right back. The reception opened with champagne toasts and a 12-piece jazz band. I worked the Whitmore family table, refilling water glasses, clearing appetizer plates. Victoria's mother offered a polite smile. Her aunts and uncles conversed about summer homes in the Hamptons. Richard Whitmore sat at the head, barely touching his food. Each time I neared, I felt his gaze. It wasn't unsettling, not predatory or harsh. It was something deeper, something I couldn't quite name. When I reached to remove his salad plate, his hand caught my wrist, gently but firmly. "I'm sorry," he said, voice low. "I need to ask you something." "Of course, sir." "Your name is Brianna?" "Yes." "Brianna Patterson?" "Yes, sir." He released me. His hand trembled. "Do you know who your mother is? Your real mother?" The question again, the same one from the rehearsal dinner. "I live with Mr. and Mrs. Patterson. They've raised me since I was a baby." Richard's expression fractured. Grief, perhaps, or recognition flickered behind his eyes. "Excuse me," he whispered, rising abruptly. I watched him stride toward the terrace doors, phone already in hand. Through the glass, I saw him pacing, speaking urgently to someone on the line. Victoria noticed. "Is my dad okay?" I didn't know what to say. At the Patterson table, Donna had observed the exchange. Her champagne flute froze midway to her lips. She leaned toward Gerald and murmured something. He turned, located me with his stare, and his face hardened into an emotion I'd never witnessed on him before. Fear. The photographer clapped his hands. "Bride and groom families, please gather by the floral arch for portraits." The Whitmores assembled first. Richard, his wife Eleanor, Victoria's brother and his wife, a cluster of elegant relatives in soft pastels. Then the Pattersons. Gerald adjusted his tie. Donna smoothed her Oscar de la Renta gown. Brandon slipped an arm around Victoria's waist. I remained back, tray in hand. The photographer scanned the group, then pointed at me. "What about her? Is she family?" Silence fell. Gerald's smile stiffened. Donna stared at the floor. Brandon said nothing. Then Richard Whitmore's voice sliced through the pause. "Yes, she's family. Brianna, please come stand beside me." I froze. "Sir?" "You heard me," he said calmly, firmly. "Come here." I set down my tray. My legs moved as though they belonged to someone else. As I approached, Gerald's face flushed crimson. He couldn't protest, not in front of Richard Whitmore, not the man funding this entire wedding, but I saw his jaw clench, fury barely restrained. Richard rested his hand on my shoulder, warm, steadying. "Right here," he murmured. "This is where you belong." The photographer adjusted his lens. "Everyone ready?" Big smiles. The flash popped. Richard kept me close while the photographer showed him the preview on the camera screen. I watched Richard's face as he zoomed in, specifically on me. His eyes glistened. "Those eyes," he whispered almost to himself. "That chin. My God." He pulled out his phone again and stepped away, dialing. I caught only fragments. "It's her, I'm certain. Get the file, the FBI cold case from 2003, and prepare a DNA kit tonight." My heart stopped. What did he just say? The instant the photographer moved on, Gerald's hand clamped around my arm. "Outside. Now." He dragged me through a service corridor, past the kitchen, into a narrow hallway lined with stacked crates of champagne. The reception's noise faded to a distant murmur. "What did you tell him?" Gerald's face hovered inches from mine, breath sharp with whiskey. "Nothing, I swear." "Don't lie to me." His grip tightened until I winced. "Why was Whitmore asking about your mother?" "I don't know. He just asked, and I said I lived with you." Gerald shoved me against the wall. Crates rattled. "Listen carefully," he hissed. "If you say one word, anything, to anyone about our family, I will throw you out on the street. No money, no clothes, nothing. You'll be homeless in a week. Do you understand?" Donna appeared at the hallway's end, heels clicking on concrete. "What's happening?" Gerald jerked his head toward me. "Whitmore keeps asking questions about her. Something's wrong." Donna's eyes narrowed. She approached slowly, champagne-colored gown brushing the floor. "Brianna," her voice was pure ice, "after the reception, you're staying to clean." "You don't speak to anyone, and whatever Mr. Whitmore wants to discuss, you tell him nothing. We are your family. We saved you. Without us, you'd be dead in a gutter somewhere." She offered that practiced public smile. "Now get back to work, and if you embarrass us again, I promise you'll regret it." They left me there, trembling alone among the champagne crates. Gerald's words reverberated in my mind. "Without papers, you don't exist." But Richard Whitmore believed I did exist. He believed I was someone. The question was, who? I returned to the reception floor in a daze. The jazz band had begun, couples swayed across the dance floor. Brandon and Victoria stood at the center, foreheads touching, the very image of newlywed bliss. Gerald and Donna sat at the family table, laughing with guests, performing their roles as devoted parents. I picked up my tray and resumed circulating, but my hands refused to steady. Gerald was right. Without documents, without proof of identity, I was no one. If I tried to leave, police would pick me up within days, a nameless vagrant with no history, no one to claim her. This was my life. It always had been. It always would be. I drifted toward the ballroom's edge, toward the exit. Maybe I could simply slip away, vanish into the night, walk until my legs gave out, and let whatever came next come. What difference would it make? No one would miss me. No one would even notice I was gone. "Brianna?" I turned. Richard Whitmore stood behind me, his face etched with an emotion I couldn't place. Concern? Grief? "May I speak with you privately, just for a moment?" I glanced toward the family table. Donna was watching, her smile frozen in place. "I don't think I should." "Please," his voice cracked. "It's important. I've been looking for someone for a very long time." He reached into his jacket pocket and drew out a photograph. Old, faded, edges worn soft from years of handling. A young woman cradling an infant, dark chestnut hair, green eyes exactly like mine. Do you recognize anyone in this picture? Richard asked quietly. My throat tightened. I don't know who that is, but something deep within me stirred, something that felt like memory. Richard guided me to the terrace overlooking the hotel gardens. The night air felt cool against my skin. Inside, the reception carried on, clinking glasses, bursts of laughter, the band easing into a Sinatra standard. Out here, only the distant hum of traffic and the pounding of my heart. He held the photograph toward me again. In the soft spill of light from the ballroom, I saw it more clearly. The woman was young, mid-20s perhaps, with a weary but radiant smile. The baby in her arms was swaddled in pink, eyes closed, impossibly small. This is my sister Margaret, and the baby is her daughter, Brianna Ashford Whitmore. I stared at him. I don't understand. 23 years ago, Margaret's baby was taken from Stanford Hospital, kidnapped from the nursery in the middle of the night. His voice wavered. My sister spent 5 years searching. She hired investigators, worked with the FBI, never stopped believing her daughter was alive. He swallowed hard. She died when the baby would have been 5. Heart failure, though the doctor said it was grief. She simply gave up. I'm so sorry, I whispered, but I don't see what this has to do with me. Richard turned to face me fully. Brianna, the baby's name was Brianna. She had green eyes, rare in our family, but Margaret had them too. He gestured toward my face. That nose, that chin, the shape of your mouth, it's identical. I took a step back. Mr. Whitmore, I think you're confused. I've been searching for 23 years. Tears traced down his cheeks. And when I saw you at the rehearsal dinner, I knew. He reached into his other pocket and drew out a small plastic container. Please let me take a DNA sample. If I'm wrong, I'll never bother you again. But if I'm right, then the people in that ballroom are not your family. They're the people who stole you. The words hung in the air like smoke. Stole you. For 23 years, I'd been told I was worthless, born to serve, fortunate to have a roof. And now this stranger was saying I might have been taken, that the people who raised me might be criminals, that I might have a family who actually wanted me. It was too much, too impossible. I can't, I said, backing away. I can't do this. Brianna, please, his voice remained gentle, urgent. I have a lab on standby, ABB certified, the gold standard, results in 72 hours, even if the test matches, if it matches, you're Margaret's daughter, you're my niece. He swallowed. And you're the legal heir to the trust she established before she died. I stopped. What trust? Margaret never gave up hope her daughter would be found. She set up a trust fund in your name, in Brianna Ashford Whitmore's name, to be released if you were ever recovered. It's been growing for 23 years. How much? Richard met my eyes. $12 million. The terrace seemed to tilt beneath me. But this isn't about money, he added quickly. It's about the truth. It's about justice. And it's about giving my sister peace, finally knowing what happened to her child. Inside, the band shifted to a slow ballad. Through the glass doors, I could see Donna scanning the room, searching for me, searching for her property. I thought of the basement, the rules, the cane hidden behind the cereal boxes. 23 years of being told I was nothing. And then I thought of Margaret Whitmore dying of grief, never knowing what became of her baby girl. I met Richard's gaze. What do I need to do? He opened the DNA kit. Just open your mouth. The next 72 hours stretched into the longest of my life. I returned to my routine. Nothing, Mrs. Patterson. I'm just tired. You're always tired. She poured the coffee down the sink. Make another pot, and this time pay attention. I brewed another pot. I washed the dishes. I folded the laundry. but in my pocket rested the slip of paper Richard had pressed into my hand, his personal cell number written in blue ink. Brandon and Victoria had departed for their honeymoon in Bali. The house felt quieter without him, yet no less suffocating. On the third night, I lay awake in the basement, staring at the concrete ceiling, counting the hours. Then my phone buzzed. The old Nokia, the only device I owned, bought with years of saved grocery change, glowed with a message from an unknown number. Results are in. Can you meet tomorrow? 10 a.m., cafe on Main Street. R.W. My heart stopped, then raced. I typed back, I'll be there. The next morning I told Donna I needed to buy cleaning supplies. She barely glanced up from her magazine. Be back by noon. I have guests coming for lunch. Yes, Mrs. Patterson. I walked out the door and kept walking, toward the truth, toward answers I'd been too frightened to seek. The cafe was small and unpretentious on Main Street, exposed brick, mismatched chairs, the rich aroma of fresh espresso. Richard was already seated at a corner table, a manila envelope before him. His eyes were red, as though sleep had eluded him. Brianna, he rose as I approached. Thank you for coming. What do the results say? He didn't reply at once. Instead, he slid the envelope across the table. I opened it with shaking fingers. The document inside brimmed with numbers, technical jargon, alleles, loci, probability indices. But one section stood out, highlighted in yellow. Combined paternity index, 99.97%. Conclusion: the tested individual, Brianna Patterson, is the biological daughter of Margaret Eleanor Whitmore, deceased. I read it 3 times, 4. The words remained unchanged. You're my niece, Richard said softly. You're Margaret's daughter. You're Brianna Ashford Whitmore. The room tilted. I gripped the table's edge. This is real. It's real. I've already contacted the FBI. The 2003 cold case is being reopened. He reached across and covered my hand. Gerald and Donna Patterson will be investigated. If they acquired you through illegal means, if they purchased you from traffickers, they will be prosecuted. Prosecuted? The word felt foreign on my tongue. Federal charges: human trafficking, document fraud, child endangerment. His voice hardened. They could face 15 to 20 years. I leaned back, clutching the DNA report to my chest. 23 years. 23 years of basements, beatings, and being told I was worthless. I wasn't wanted. I had a family, a real family, a mother who loved me so fiercely she died of grief when she lost me. And now, at last, the truth was rising. I want to pause here because this is the moment everything shifted. For 23 years, I believed I was nothing, deserving nothing. In 72 hours, a single DNA test obliterated that lie. But now I faced a choice: walk away quietly, start anew somewhere else, never look back, or allow the truth to surface and let Gerald and Donna face what they had done. What would you do? Tell me in the comments. I want to know. And if you're still here with me, hit subscribe because the final confrontation is coming and it will change everything. 1 week later, the trap was set. Richard had invited the Patterson family to his Greenwich estate, a 12-bedroom mansion on 5 acres, stone gates, circular driveway lined with sculpted topiaries. The stated purpose was discussing business opportunities for Brandon. Gerald had been euphoric when the invitation arrived. This is it, he'd crooned at dinner. Richard Whitmore wants me in his inner circle. I knew this marriage would pay dividends. Donna had spent 3 days choosing her outfit: pale blue Armani pantsuit, pearl earrings, freshly highlighted hair. Brandon and Victoria were flying back early from Bali just for the meeting. No one suspected a thing. I was instructed to come along, naturally, to help serve refreshments, Donna said, as if it were obvious. I didn't argue. When we arrived, Gerald let out a low whistle. This must be worth $30 million. Easy, Donna murmured, eyes gleaming. More. We were ushered into the main sitting room. Soaring 20-foot ceilings, oil paintings and gilded frames, furniture that belonged in a museum. Richard greeted us warmly, shaking Gerald's hand, kissing Donna's cheek. "Please make yourselves comfortable. Brandon and Victoria should be arriving any moment." I lingered near the doorway, observing. Gerald didn't notice the others in the house, the man in the gray suit waiting in the adjacent room, the woman with a manila folder on her lap. But I did. Richard caught my eye and offered the faintest nod. The FBI agents were in place, the evidence was prepared, and Gerald and Donna Patterson had walked directly into the reckoning they had evaded for 23 years. A housekeeper brought in tea service, bone china worth more than the Pattersons' car. Donna accepted her cup with theatrical grace, crossing her ankles the way she'd seen in old films. "This is a beautiful home, Richard, just stunning." "Thank you." Richard settled into his armchair, expression pleasant yet inscrutable. "I wanted to discuss something with you before Brandon arrives, something about Brianna." Gerald's cup rattled against its saucer. "Brianna," he continued, gesturing toward me in the doorway, "she's been part of your family for quite some time, hasn't she?" "Since she was a baby," Donna answered swiftly. "We adopted her when she was just a few months, gave her everything, a home, food, education. We've been very good to her." "Adopted?" Richard nodded slowly. "That's interesting, because I had my attorneys check the county records. There is no adoption paperwork on file for anyone named Brianna Patterson." Silence descended. Gerald set down his teacup. "The records must be incomplete. You know how government agencies are. Things get lost." "I also checked with the state of Connecticut," Richard continued, voice steady and calm. "No birth certificate, no social security number issued at birth, no hospital records anywhere in the tri-state area." Donna's practiced smile began to fracture. "What exactly are you implying, Richard?" "I'm implying that Brianna has no legal identity, no documentation whatsoever." He leaned forward, "which raises a very interesting question. Where did she come from?" Gerald stood abruptly. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I don't appreciate the accusation." Richard didn't flinch. "It's not an accusation, Gerald. Not yet." He opened the leather portfolio on the table beside him. "But I think you should see what's in this folder." Richard withdrew 2 documents and placed them on the coffee table. The first was the DNA report I'd already seen, highlighted conclusion, 99.97% certainty. The second was older, a photocopied FBI report, case number at the top, confidential stamped in red. "This," Richard said, pointing to the DNA report, "confirms that Brianna is a 99.97% genetic match to my late sister, Margaret Whitmore. Brianna is her biological daughter." Gerald's face drained from red to ashen. "And this," Richard tapped the FBI document, "is the cold case file from March 2003. My niece, Brianna Ashford Whitmore, was abducted from Stanford Hospital when she was 6 months old. She was never found." He looked up at Gerald. "Until now." Donna's teacup slipped from her fingers and shattered on the Persian rug. "This is insane," Gerald sputtered. We would never." "Then explain the documents," Richard said, voice hardening. "Explain why she has no birth certificate, no adoption records, no proof she was ever legally your child." "There was a fire," Donna's voice pitched high. "Records were lost." "There was no fire," Richard cut her off. "I checked every hospital within a 300-mile radius. No fire, no lost records, no Brianna born to any family named Patterson." The door to the adjacent room opened. A man in a gray suit stepped through, followed by a woman displaying a badge. "Gerald Patterson, Donna Patterson." The man's voice was flat, official. "I'm Special Agent Morrison with the FBI. We have some questions about the acquisition of your daughter." Gerald stumbled backward, face ashen. Donna began to cry, and I stood there watching the walls finally close in on the people who had called themselves my parents. What happened next unfolded swiftly. Special Agent Morrison produced a warrant. His partner, Agent Chen, I later learned she'd recently married and taken the name Smith, began reading the Miranda rights. Gerald Patterson, Donna Patterson, you are under arrest for suspicion of human trafficking, document fraud, and child endangerment. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Gerald tried to run. He managed 3 steps before Agent Morrison caught his arm and pinned him against the wall. The man who had terrorized me for 23 years, who had starved me, beaten me, told me I was nothing, whimpered like a child as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Donna collapsed onto the sofa, mascara streaming down her cheeks. Brianna, please tell them this is a mistake. We're your family. We raised you." I looked at her, at the woman who slapped me for asking questions, who had confined me to the basement, who had told me I was born to serve. "You raised me as a servant," I said. My voice was calm, steady. "You never treated me like family, not once." "We gave you everything." "You gave me a mattress on a concrete floor." I took a step closer. "You took my identity. You took my childhood. You took my mother from me." Donna's face crumpled. "We didn't know. We thought you knew." Gerald's voice cut through, suddenly vicious, even in handcuffs. "You knew exactly what we were doing, Donna. Don't pretend otherwise." At that moment, the front door opened. Brandon and Victoria walked in, tanned, smiling, fresh from Bali, until they saw the FBI agents and their parents in handcuffs. Victoria's smile vanished. "What the hell is going on?" Federal charges came down within the month. Gerald and Donna Patterson were indicted on 3 counts each: human trafficking under 18 U.S.C. Section 1589, document fraud, and child endangerment. The investigation revealed they had purchased me from an underground adoption network in 2003 for $15,000, cash, untraceable. The network had been dismantled years earlier, but the FBI had retained records. My name appeared on a ledger, listed between a purchase price and a delivery date, like inventory. The trial lasted 4 months. I testified twice. Gerald maintained his innocence to the end, claiming he'd been told I was an orphan, that he'd simply given me a better life. The jury didn't believe him. Donna turned on him during her testimony, claiming she'd been coerced, that Gerald had threatened her, that she'd always wanted to treat me better but couldn't. The jury didn't believe her either. At final sentencing, Gerald received 18 years in federal prison. Donna received 12. Their assets were frozen pending civil proceedings. The house in Fairfield County, the one with the sub-zero refrigerator, the Calicut marble, and the basement where I'd slept for 23 years, was seized to cover legal fees and potential restitution. Brandon's world collapsed too. Richard Whitmore withdrew all financial support the day of the arrest. The $200,000 wedding bill became Brandon's debt. His job at Whitmore Properties was terminated immediately. Victoria filed for divorce 3 weeks later. "I can't do this," I heard Brandon tell Victoria on the phone. "Your parents bought a human being. They trafficked a child. I can't be associated with that." The man who had grown up as a prince was suddenly alone, unemployed, and drowning in debt. And me? For the first time in my life, I was free. Brandon called me 6 months after the sentencing. I almost didn't answer. The name on the screen, Brandon Patterson, still triggered something cold in my chest even then, but curiosity won. "Hello, Brianna." His voice was thin, unfamiliar, not the confident golden boy I'd grown up serving. Someone hollowed out. "I need to talk to you." "About what?" I'm in trouble." He laughed bitterly. "That's an understatement. The apartment's gone. The car's gone. Victoria's lawyer is demanding damages for the emotional distress of being associated with my family. I can't get a job anywhere. Everyone's seen the news." I waited. "I was wondering if maybe you could help me out. Just a loan. Just until I get back on my feet." There it was. 23 years of being treated like furniture, and now he needed something from me. "Brandon," I said slowly, "in all the years we lived in the same house, did you ever help me?" Silence. Did you ever stand up for me when Gerald hit me? Did you ever ask why I slept in the basement? Did you ever once treat me like a sister? I didn't know. You knew. My voice stayed level. You just didn't care. I was convenient. I made your life easier. And now that I'm not there to serve you anymore, you have no idea how to survive. Brianna, please. I'm not going to help you, Brandon. Not because I hate you, but because you need to learn something you never learned growing up. I paused. Actions have consequences, and so does silence. I hung up. My hand was shaking, but my heart was steady. For the first time in my life, I had set a boundary, and I intended to keep it. The inheritance came through 3 months after the trial ended. Richard's lawyers had worked tirelessly, verifying my identity, activating the trust Margaret had established in 2003. The process required court orders, FBI confirmation, stacks of paperwork, but eventually the final document arrived. Beneficiary, Brianna Ashford Whitmore. Trust value, $12,847,329.16. Status, active. I read the number 7 times before it felt real. Richard drove me to the bank himself on the day the funds were released. We sat in a private office on the top floor, mahogany furniture, oil paintings, while a banker explained investment options and tax implications. $12 million, more money than the Pattersons would see in 10 lifetimes. But it wasn't the money that changed me. It was the name, Brianna Ashford Whitmore, my real name, the name my mother had given me before I was stolen. Richard helped me move into a guest suite at the Greenwich Estate. I had my own room with windows overlooking a rose garden, a king bed size with Egyptian cotton sheets, and a bathroom larger than my old basement. The first night, I couldn't sleep. I walked around touching the walls, running my fingers across the curtains, reminding myself this was real. Richard enrolled me in a college preparation program. My lack of formal education didn't matter. There were resources, tutors, specialists who helped survivors of trafficking rebuild their lives. A year later, I received my acceptance letter. Yale University, full scholarship through a program for human trafficking survivors. I held the letter and cried for an hour. Then I found something else in the estate's archives, a handwritten note from Margaret, dated 2003, the year I was taken. I visited Gerald and Donna once. It was 8 months after their sentencing. I didn't owe them anything. Richard and my therapist both said I shouldn't go, but I needed closure. I needed to look them in the eye and say what I'd carried for 23 years. The Federal Correctional Facility in northern Pennsylvania was gray concrete, razor wire, fluorescent lights that made everyone look ill. Gerald was escorted in first, orange jumpsuit hanging loose on his thinner frame. His tag heuer was gone. His wrist was bare. Donna came next. No Oscar de la Renta, no pearls, just prison-issue clothing and a face that had aged 10 years in 8 months. They sat across from me at a metal table. "You came," Donna whispered, eyes welling. "I prayed you would come. I'm not here for reconciliation. I'm here because I have something to say." Gerald glared, even now, broken and imprisoned, that familiar contempt flickering. "Then say it." I met his gaze. "For 23 years, you made me believe I was worthless, that I was born to serve, that I should be grateful for scraps." I kept my voice steady. "But you were wrong. I wasn't born to serve. I was stolen, and you knew it." Donna sobbed. "We thought we were saving you." "You thought you were getting free labor," I cut her off. "I'm not here for your excuses. I'm here to tell you I'm done. I'm not carrying your shame anymore. I'm not carrying your cruelty." I stood. "I will never forget what you did to me, but I won't let it define me either." I hung up. My hand was shaking, but my heart was steady. For the first time in my life, I had set a boundary and I intended to keep it. I'm writing this from my dorm room at Yale. It's small, much smaller than the suite at Richard's estate, but it's mine. My name is on the door, my books are on the shelves, my acceptance letter is framed above my desk. Some mornings I still wake up at 5 out of habit, but now instead of scrubbing floors, I make coffee and read my psychology textbooks. I'm studying to become a therapist, specifically to work with survivors of trafficking and family abuse. I want to help people like me find their way out of the darkness. On my nightstand, next to my alarm clock, I keep two things. The first is my new birth certificate, Brianna Ashford Whitmore, born March 3, 2003, at Stanford Hospital, California. Mother, Margaret Eleanor Whitmore. The second is the letter Richard found in Margaret's archives, the one she wrote to me the week I was taken, before she knew I was stolen. My darling Brianna, if you're reading this one day, I want you to know that you were the greatest gift I ever received. From the moment you were born, I knew you were meant for extraordinary things. No matter what happens, no matter where life takes you, remember, you are loved, you are wanted, you are enough. I read it every morning. 23 years I believed I was nothing, that I was born to serve, that I didn't deserve a seat at the table. Now I know the truth. I was born to be loved, and I'm spending the rest of my life making sure others know they were too. Thank you for staying with Brianna until the end. Many details in this story have been dramatized to deliver meaningful messages and life lessons. But life is full of unexpected twists, and situations like this do happen more often than we'd like to believe. Every year, thousands of missing children